Jackson Reed's motorcycle rumbled to a stop at the gas station on the edge of town, the engine quieting to a gentle purr as he dismounted. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked concrete, and Jackson rolled his shoulders to ease the tension from the long ride. At 52, his body reminded him daily of the years he'd spent serving his country, but he wore those aches with pride, just like the faded Marine Corps patch on his leather riding jacket. The gas station was a small, weathered place, the kind you find on forgotten highways where travelers stop more out of necessity than choice. Jackson grabbed the fuel nozzle and began filling his tank, his mind already on the event ahead. The annual K9 demonstration day was one of the few times a year when the public got to see what he and his team did at the training facility, and he wanted everything to be perfect. He was so lost in thought that he barely noticed the group of young men hanging around the side of the building until their laughter grew louder. There were 4 of them, probably in their early 20s, killing time with energy drinks and loud conversations. Jackson paid them no mind until he felt eyes on him. "Check out Grandpa and his midlife crisis bike," one of them said, not bothering to lower his voice. He was tall and lanky with a snapback hat turned backward. His friend snickered. "Probably thinks those military stickers make him look tough." Jackson sighed quietly. He'd heard worse, much worse, during his tours overseas. The gas pump clicked, signaling the tank was full, and he replaced the nozzle. He needed to get inside to pay, but the group was blocking the path to the entrance. "Excuse me, fellas," Jackson said politely, his voice carrying the slight gravel of someone who'd once been used to shouting commands. "Just need to get by to pay." The group exchanged glances, making no move to clear a path. The one with the snapback looked Jackson up and down, taking in the gray at his temples and the slight stiffness in his walk. "What's the rush, old-timer? Got a bingo game to get to?" His friends laughed like this was the cleverest thing they'd heard all day. Jackson kept his expression neutral. "No bingo today, just a training demonstration I need to get to." "Training? What are you training, your walker?" Another round of laughter. Jackson tried to step around them, but the tallest one shifted to block his path. Inside the store, the page attendant watched through the window but made no move to intervene. "Maybe you didn't hear me," Jackson said, his voice still calm but firmer now. "I need to get by." "Maybe you need to say please," the tall one said, stepping closer to Jackson, using his height to try to intimidate. Jackson looked up at him with steady eyes. "Please," he said simply. For a moment, it seemed like that would be the end of it. Then, without warning, the young man pushed Jackson's shoulder hard, sending him stumbling back a step. "Oops," the guy said with a smirk. "Guess you're not so steady on your feet anymore." Jackson caught himself, his old reflexes still sharp enough to keep him from falling. He looked at the group, then at the attendant, who quickly looked away, pretending to be busy with something under the counter. He could feel a familiar heat rising in his chest, the kind that had gotten him into trouble in his younger days. But years of discipline had taught him to channel that heat differently. Without a word, Jackson straightened his jacket, walked around the far side of the group, and entered the store. The clerk wouldn't meet his eyes as he paid for the gas. Through the window, he could see the young men still laughing, reenacting the push for each other's amusement. "You know those boys?" Jackson asked the clerk. "Local kids." The attendant shrugged. "They hang around here a lot, don't mean no real harm." Jackson nodded, took his receipt, and walked back to his motorcycle. The group watched him, clearly disappointed that he wasn't putting up more of a fight. As he swung his leg over the seat and started the engine, one of them called out something that was lost in the roar. Jackson simply put on his helmet, gave them one last look, and pulled out onto the highway. He rode steadily, the wind rushing past him, his mind turning over what had just happened. It wasn't the disrespect that bothered him. He'd faced plenty of that in his life. It was the casual cruelty, the way they'd targeted him simply because they thought he was weak. An easy mark. 3 miles down the road, Jackson pulled into a scenic overlook and cut the engine. He took out his phone and dialed a number he knew. "By heart, Martinez," answered a crisp voice on the other end. "It's Reed," Jackson said. "How's the setup going?" "Right on schedule, boss. Dogs are ready, handlers are briefed. We've got about 45 minutes before the first demonstration." You on your way? Jackson paused, looking back in the direction of the gas station. I am, but I'm thinking we might make a quick stop first. How many vehicles did we bring today? Full. Convoy, Martinez replied. 17 transport vans plus the staff cars. Why? Jackson felt the first smile of the day cross his face. I just had an interesting experience at the gas station down the road. Think we could spare 10 minutes for a little detour? There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Martinez laughed. What did you have in mind? Jackson explained his idea quickly. When he finished, Martinez was quiet for a moment. That's not exactly what I expected, Martinez finally said. But I like it, not what I would have done in your place. What would you have done? Jackson asked. Probably something I'd regret, Martinez admitted. Your way's better. Give us the address, and we'll see you there in 15. Jackson ended the call and started his motorcycle again. As he pulled back onto the highway, heading back the way he came, he felt a lightness replacing the weight of the earlier encounter. Sometimes the best response to disrespect wasn't force or even anger. It was something else entirely. The road stretched out before him, and Jackson opened up the throttle. Behind him, he knew, a convoy was changing course, and nearly 100 of the best-trained military dogs in the country were about to make an unexpected appearance at a rundown gas station on the edge of town. The wind whistled past Jackson's ears as he rode back toward the gas station, his motorcycle eating up the miles of empty highway. His phone call to Martinez had been brief, but effective. Jackson wasn't the type of man who sought revenge, but he did believe in teaching moments, and he had a feeling that the young men at the gas station were about to receive an education they wouldn't soon forget. As he rode, Jackson thought about the training facility he'd built after leaving the Marines. It had started small, just him, 2 retired military dogs, and a dream of giving both veterans and canines a purpose after their service ended. 8 years later, the facility had grown into one of the premier training centers in the country, preparing dogs not just for military service but for police departments, search and rescue teams, and therapy work. Today was supposed to be their annual demonstration day, a chance to show the public what these amazing animals could do. The fairgrounds would be filled with families, potential clients, and supporters. Jackson checked his watch. They still had plenty of time to make their detour and get to the main event. He spotted the gas station in the distance, its faded sign visible from a quarter-mile away. The same group of young men was still loitering outside, apparently with nowhere better to be on a Saturday afternoon. Jackson pulled into the lot and parked his bike in the same spot as before. The young men noticed him immediately, nudging each other and straightening up with renewed interest. "Look who's back," said the one with the snapback hat, his voice carrying across the lot. "Forget something, old-timer?" Jackson removed his helmet and hung it on his handlebars. He didn't approach the group, nor did he respond to their taunts. Instead, he leaned against his motorcycle, arms crossed, and waited. The young men exchanged confused glances. This wasn't the reaction they'd expected. They'd anticipated anger, maybe even a confrontation they could laugh about later. Instead, Jackson simply stood there, checking his watch occasionally, as if waiting for something important. "What's he doing?" one of them muttered. "Probably calling the cops," another suggested, though he didn't sound too concerned. "I ain't scared of no cops," the tall one declared, though he kept glancing nervously at Jackson. A few minutes passed in this strange standoff. The gas station attendant had come to the door, clearly wondering what was happening. A couple of customers pulled in, filled their tanks, and left, giving curious looks to both Jackson and the group of young men. Then, from the direction of the highway, came a low rumble. It started as a distant hum, but quickly grew louder, the sound of multiple engines approaching in formation. Jackson checked his watch one last time and smiled. The young men turned toward the sound, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief as the first vehicle appeared. It was a large black van with K9 unit emblazoned on its side in bold white letters. Behind it came another, then a whole procession of vehicles, transport vans, SUVs, and trucks, all bearing military or police K9 insignias. What the tall one began, but his words trailed off as the convoy pulled into the gas station, quickly filling the small lot and spilling out onto the shoulder of the road. Jackson straightened up from his motorcycle and walked toward the lead vehicle as it came to a stop. The driver's door opened, and a woman with short salt and pepper hair and the straight-backed posture of a career military officer stepped out. "Right on time, Martinez," Jackson called. Martinez nodded, scanning the gas station and the now silent group of young men. "Wouldn't miss it, boss." All around them, doors were opening as handlers exited their vehicles. Each one was dressed in similar training gear, khaki pants and black polo shirts with the facility's logo. And with each handler came a dog. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, and even a few Labrador Retrievers emerged from the vehicles, all wearing working vests or harnesses that identified them as service animals. The dogs moved, with their handlers in perfect sync, alert but calm, their training evident in every step. There was no barking, no lunging, just disciplined, powerful animals following their handler's lead. The young men at the gas station had gone completely still, their earlier bravado evaporated. The tallest one, who had pushed Jackson, actually took a step back as he counted the growing number of dogs filing into the station. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice noticeably higher than before. Jackson walked over to them, his posture relaxed but confident. The entire gas station had transformed in minutes, from a quiet roadside stop to what looked like a military operation. Cars passing on the highway were slowing down to stare at the unusual sight. "Gentlemen," Jackson said when he reached the group, "I wanted to introduce myself properly. I'm Master Sergeant Jackson Reed, retired Marine Corps. These are my colleagues and the dogs we train at our facility just outside of town." The young men stared at him, then at the assembled handlers and dogs, nearly 100 in total, spread out around the gas station in a display that was impossible to ignore. You train all these dogs?" the one with the snapback asked, his earlier mockery replaced with what sounded like genuine awe. "Not just me," Jackson replied. "We're a team. Some of these handlers are veterans like me. Others are former police officers or civilian trainers who specialize in working with service animals. The dogs you see here have served in war zones, rescued people from disaster areas, tracked missing children, and detected everything from bombs to drugs to cancer." He paused, letting his words sink in. Around them, the handlers stood at ease, the dogs sitting obediently at their sides. It was an impressive display of discipline and training. "We're on our way to our annual demonstration day at the county fairgrounds," Jackson continued. "It's open to the public. We show what these dogs can do, share their stories, and help people understand the bond between a handler and their K9 partner." He reached into his pocket and pulled out several pamphlets, which he offered to the young men. "You're welcome to come if you're interested. First demonstration starts in an hour." The tall one who had pushed Jackson looked at the pamphlet, then at Jackson's face. There was confusion in his eyes, and something else. Maybe the beginning of understanding. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked. "Why'd you come back with all this?" He gestured at the impressive assembly of handlers and dogs. Jackson considered the question for a moment. "Because sometimes we make assumptions about people based on what we see on the surface. An old guy on a motorcycle might be just that, or he might be someone with a story and connections you never imagined." He looked around at the assembled team. Everyone has a story, and everyone deserves respect until they prove they don't deserve it. The gas station attendant had come outside now, staring open-mouthed at the transformation of his workplace. Other cars had pulled in, drivers curious about the unusual gathering. "Besides," Jackson added with a slight smile, "I thought you might enjoy meeting some real working dogs. They're pretty impressive up close." As if to prove his point, one of the handlers nearby gave a hand signal, and her Belgian Malinois immediately dropped into a perfect down position, eyes alert and focused entirely on her. The young men watched, their earlier swagger completely gone. The power dynamic had shifted entirely, but not in the way they might have expected. There were no threats, no aggression, just a calm demonstration of capability and discipline that spoke louder than any words could have. A cloud of dust rose from the highway as the convoy approached the gas station. The afternoon sun caught the metal of the vehicles, creating flashes of light that announced their arrival long before the rumble of engines reached the small outpost. Jackson stood by his motorcycle, watching as the procession of vans and trucks turned off the main road and began filling the station's modest parking area. The young men who had harassed him earlier now stood in awkward silence, shifting their weight from foot to foot as vehicle after vehicle pulled in. Their faces showed a mixture of confusion and growing unease. The gas station, normally a quiet spot where few people lingered, was suddenly the busiest place for miles around. "What is happening?" muttered the gas station attendant who had stepped outside, watching as his small forecourt transformed into what looked like a military staging area. The lead vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows, came to a stop near Jackson. Martinez stepped out, sunglasses hiding her eyes but not the slight smile on her face. She nodded to Jackson and then turned to survey the scene, taking in the group of young men with a quick, assessing glance. "All units accounted for," she said to Jackson. "We've got about 30 minutes before we need to be at the fairgrounds." "Plenty of time," Jackson replied, his voice carrying just enough for the young men to hear. Doors opened all around the gas station as handlers stepped out of their vehicles. The young men's eyes widened as they realized that almost every vehicle contained at least one dog, and not just any dogs. These were working animals in their prime, muscled and alert, moving with purpose and discipline beside their handlers. German Shepherd emerged from the nearest van, its dark eyes scanning the surroundings before settling into a perfect heel position beside a handler with cropped hair and the bearing of someone used to commanding respect. Another van yielded a pair of Belgian Malinois, their tan coats gleaming in the sunlight as they moved in sync with their handler, never pulling on their leads or breaking position. More dogs appeared, Dutch Shepherds with their brindle coats, Labrador Retrievers moving with surprising grace for their sturdy frames, even a few of the rarer breeds like giant Schnauzers and Bloodhounds. Each animal was equipped with a working vest or harness that identified them as service dogs. Some vests bore military insignias, others police or search and rescue markings. Within minutes, the gas station had been transformed. Where there had been empty space, there now stood an assembly of some of the most highly trained canines in the country, each one a testament to thousands of hours of careful training and the deep bond between dog and handler. The tall young man who had pushed Jackson earlier swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly in his throat. "Are those military dogs?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jackson walked toward the group, his steps unhurried. The confidence in his walk was more noticeable now, the slight military bearing that never quite leaves those who have served. "Some of them," he answered. "Others work with police departments, border patrol, search and rescue teams. A few are being trained for medical detection. They can smell changes in a person's body chemistry that might indicate disease before any machine can detect it." He gestured toward a chocolate Labrador sitting attentively beside a woman in her 40s. "That's Cooper. He's trained to detect when someone with diabetes is about to have a blood sugar crash, sometimes 15 minutes before it happens. He's saved his handler's life 3 times already." The young men followed his gaze, taking in the ordinary-looking dog that possessed such extraordinary abilities. "And that pair over there," Jackson continued, pointing to 2 Belgian Malinois standing at attention. "They served 2 tours in Afghanistan. They've detected more buried explosives than any piece of equipment the military has. Each one of them saved dozens of lives." The dogs sat calmly amid the unusual surroundings, their training evident in the way they remained focused despite the distractions. A few passing cars had slowed to a crawl as drivers tried to figure out what was happening at the usually quiet gas station. Some had even pulled over, curiosity getting the better of them. "Why did you bring them all here?" asked the young man with the snapback hat, his earlier mockery replaced with something that sounded like genuine curiosity. Jackson considered the question for a moment. Around them, handlers were allowing their dogs to stretch their legs, some practicing simple commands, others checking equipment. The gas station had become an impromptu training ground. "I could say it was to teach you a lesson," Jackson finally replied. to show you that the old-timer you thought was an easy target has connections you never imagined. But that would be petty, and I outgrew petty a long time ago." He gestured to the assembled teams. "These dogs and their handlers are on their way to a demonstration at the county fairgrounds. We do it every year to show the public what these animals can do, to educate people about the work, and to raise funds for our training program. We help place retired military dogs with veterans who need support, and we train new dogs for service." Jackson looked directly at the tall young man who had pushed him. "I brought them here because I thought you might be interested in seeing what real strength and discipline look like. It's not about intimidation or proving who's tougher. It's about service, about using your abilities to help others, rather than to push them around." The young man had the good grace to look embarrassed, his eyes dropping to his shoes. One of the handlers approached, leading a German shepherd with a graying muzzle that suggested it was one of the older dogs present. "Everything okay, boss?" the handler asked, glancing at the group of young men. "Just fine, Rodriguez," Jackson replied. "I was telling these gentlemen about our program. This is Hero, right?" The handler nodded, pride evident in his face. 7 years of service, 2 Purple Hearts, retired now but still helps train the younger dogs. The German shepherd sat at attention, its intelligent eyes taking in the scene. Despite its age, there was a dignity and power to the animal that commanded respect. "Would they like to meet him?" Rodriguez asked. Jackson looked at the young men questioningly. After a moment's hesitation, the one with the snapback hat stepped forward. "Is it safe?" he asked. Rodriguez smiled. "Hero's been through firefights, sandstorms, and worse. A gas station in the middle of nowhere doesn't faze him. He's one of our ambassadors now, helps people understand what these dogs can do." He gave a hand signal, and Hero immediately lay down, resting his head on his paws in a non-threatening posture. "You can approach if you want," Rodriguez said. "Offer your hand palm down. Let him sniff you first." The young man glanced at his friends, then took a cautious step forward. He extended his hand as instructed, and Hero sniffed it politely before giving a single wag of his tail. A dignified acknowledgement. "He served in Iraq?" the young man asked, carefully stroking the dog's head. "Iraq and Afghanistan," Rodriguez confirmed. "Saved my life and the lives of my unit more times than I can count. Best partner I ever had." The other young men had drawn closer now, their earlier hostility forgotten in the face of this unexpected encounter. Around them, other handlers had noticed what was happening and were bringing their dogs over, creating an impromptu meet and greet. Jackson stepped back, watching as the young men who had mocked him minutes earlier now asked respectful questions about the dogs and their training. Martinez appeared at his side. "Not what I expected when you called," she admitted. "I thought we might be making a more forceful point." Jackson shook his head. "Force rarely teaches the lesson you want. These kids needed to see something different than what they're used to." They watched as one of the young men, the quiet one who had hung back during the earlier confrontation, knelt to greet a Labrador puppy that was just starting its training. The smile on his face was genuine, perhaps the first real expression Jackson had seen from any of them. "Think they'll show up at the demonstration?" Martinez asked. Jackson considered the transformation taking place before them, the shift from mockery to interest, from disrespect to engagement. "Maybe," he said. "And if they do, maybe they'll learn something more than just tricks dogs can do. Sometimes the best response to disrespect isn't more disrespect. Sometimes it's offering a different path entirely." The gas station had never seen anything like it. What had started as a simple refueling stop had transformed into an impromptu demonstration area, with handlers and their dogs spread across the parking lot. The young men who had ridiculed Jackson earlier now moved among the teams, their body language completely changed. Gone was the aggressive posturing, replaced by genuine curiosity and even a touch of awe. Jackson stood near his motorcycle, observing the scene with quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about humiliation or revenge. It was about opening eyes and minds. Martinez approached, holding a clipboard with the day's schedule. 10 more minutes, then we need to head out. she said, checking her watch. The county commissioner is opening the event, and we should be there before he starts his speech. Jackson nodded. Let the handlers know. I'll wrap things up here. As Martinez moved away to spread the word, the tall young man who had pushed Jackson approached. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets and he couldn't quite meet Jackson's eyes. Those dogs are something else, he said, his voice subdued. The handlers were showing us how they can find people buried under rubble, and that one dog that can smell when someone's about to have a seizure, that's crazy. Not crazy, Jackson corrected gently. Just what happens when you take an animal's natural abilities and focus them through training. Dogs have been working alongside humans for thousands of years. We're just continuing that partnership. The young man nodded, scuffing his shoe against the pavement. Listen, about before, he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Jackson waited, giving him space to find his way. I was a jerk, the young man finally said. We all were. I don't know why. I do know why. We were bored, and you seemed like an easy target. Old guy, alone. He trailed off, shaking his head. But that's no excuse. No, Jackson agreed, it's not. The young man looked up, finally meeting Jackson's gaze. I'm sorry. For pushing you. For the things we said. You didn't deserve that. The apology was simple but seemed genuine. Jackson studied the young man's face, seeing past the tough exterior to something else. Perhaps a glimpse of the person he could become if given the right guidance. What's your name? Jackson asked. Tyler, the young man replied. Well, Tyler, apology accepted. Jackson extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Tyler shook it. His grip was firm but no longer trying to prove anything. So what happens at this demonstration thing you're doing? Tyler asked, gesturing toward the vehicles that were now being prepared for departure. It's pretty impressive, actually, Jackson said. We show how the dogs are trained, what they can do. Some of the demonstrations are basic. Obedience, agility, that sort of thing. Others are more specialized, like detecting substances or tracking people through difficult terrain. We have a mock building collapse where the search and rescue dogs show how they find survivors. Tyler nodded, seeming genuinely interested. And you run this whole thing? I started it, Jackson said. After I left the Marines, I needed something to do with myself. I'd worked with military dogs during my service, saw what they were capable of. But I also saw how many veterans struggled to find purpose after coming home. And I knew that a lot of retired military dogs needed places to go, too. It seemed like a natural fit to bring them together. Around them, handlers were beginning to load their dogs back into vehicles. The impromptu meet and greet was winding down as the teams prepared to head to their scheduled event. The demonstration starts at 2, Jackson said. It's open to the public. Free admission, though we do accept donations for the program. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out several more pamphlets, handing them to Tyler. In case you and your friends are interested, there's a map to the fairgrounds on the back. Tyler took the pamphlets, looking slightly surprised at the invitation. You'd be okay with us showing up? After how we acted? Jackson smiled slightly. Everyone deserves a second chance, Tyler. That's kind of the foundation of what we do at the center. Many of our handlers are people who needed a fresh start. Veterans dealing with PTSD, former addicts rebuilding their lives, kids who were heading down the wrong path until they found something worth working for. He gestured toward a young handler who was loading a Belgian Malinois into one of the vans. Bobby over there was in juvenile detention when I met him. Now he's one of our best trainers, working with dogs that help find missing people. People can change if they're given the opportunity and motivation. Tyler looked thoughtful, turning the pamphlet over in his hands. His 3 friends had gathered nearby, watching the exchange with uncertain expressions. I should get going, Jackson said, checking his watch. We've got a schedule to keep. He swung his leg over his motorcycle and started the engine. The deep rumble filled the air, but it was no longer the only sound in the quiet gas station. The dogs and handlers had brought life and energy to the place. Martinez pulled up beside Jackson in the lead vehicle. "All teams are ready to move." "Out," she reported. "We'll follow your lead." Jackson nodded, then looked back at Tyler and his friends. 2:00, he reminded them. "If you decide to come, ask for me at the main entrance. I'll make sure you get good seats." With that, he put on his helmet and pulled away from the gas station, the convoy of vehicles falling into formation behind him. In his mirrors, he could see Tyler and his friends standing in the parking lot, watching the procession leave, the pamphlet still clutched in Tyler's hand. The road to the fairgrounds was mostly empty, allowing the convoy to move at a steady pace. Jackson rode at the front, leading the way with the same quiet confidence he'd shown throughout his military career and into his civilian life. The encounter at the gas station had been unexpected, but perhaps it had served a purpose beyond what he'd initially imagined. As they approached the turnoff for the fairgrounds, Jackson could see that a crowd had already gathered. The annual demonstration had grown in popularity each year, with families, school groups, and potential clients all coming to see what these remarkable dogs could do. Banners fluttered in the breeze, and volunteers in bright vests directed traffic toward the designated parking areas. Jackson guided his motorcycle through the main entrance where the county commissioner stood waiting with several local officials. The man stepped forward, hand extended as Jackson dismounted. "Sergeant Reed, right on time as always," the commissioner said, shaking Jackson's hand vigorously. "We've got quite a turnout this year. People are excited to see what your teams can do." "We won't disappoint," Jackson assured him, removing his helmet. Behind him, the convoy of vehicles was being directed to the staging area behind the main arena. Handlers and dogs would have about 20 minutes to prepare before the first demonstration. "I heard you made an unscheduled stop on the way here," the commissioner said with a curious smile. "My wife was getting gas when your whole team pulled in. Said it was quite a sight." Jackson smiled slightly. "Just a little community outreach. Never miss an opportunity to educate the public about what these dogs can do." The commissioner laughed. "Well, whatever you were doing, it worked." She said some young locals who are usually up to no good were actually helping unload equipment and asking questions. That's a minor miracle in itself. Jackson glanced back toward the entrance, wondering if Tyler and his friends would actually show up. He had seen something in Tyler's eyes, a flicker of interest, perhaps even respect, that suggested the encounter had made an impression. Whether it would last beyond today was another question entirely. But sometimes all it took was one moment, one connection, to change a person's path. "You never know what might make a difference," Jackson said. "Sometimes it's the unexpected encounters that have the biggest impact." As he walked with the commissioner toward the main arena, Jackson could hear the excited murmurs of the crowd. Children pointed as the first handlers began to lead their dogs toward the staging area. Today was about showcasing the incredible abilities of these animals and the humans who worked with them. But perhaps it had also become about something more, about respect, second chances, and the unexpected ways people could connect across the divisions of age and experience. The county fairgrounds buzzed with activity as the afternoon demonstration got underway. Jackson stood at the edge of the main arena, watching as handlers and their dogs moved through the various stations they had set up. The bleachers surrounding the arena were filled with spectators, families with children, veterans in caps identifying their service units, local police officers, and curious community members who had heard about the impressive display of canine skills. The first demonstration had gone perfectly. A team of German shepherds had shown their obedience training, moving through complex routines with their handlers. The crowd had applauded enthusiastically when one dog had weaved through an obstacle course while completely ignoring the distractions placed along the path: tennis balls, food treats, and even a remote-controlled toy car. "Next up is the detection demonstration," Martinez said, approaching Jackson with a clipboard. "Rodriguez and Hero are ready, along with the 3 younger dogs. We've hidden the training samples in the mock apartment setup." Jackson nodded. "Give them the go-ahead. I'll handle the narration for this one." As Martinez moved away to signal the handlers, Jackson scanned the crowd one more time. He'd been doing it periodically since the event began, though he tried not to make it obvious. So far, there had been no sign of Tyler and his friends from the gas station. Jackson wasn't surprised. He'd offered the invitation without much expectation that they would accept, but he found himself feeling a twinge of disappointment nonetheless. He picked up the microphone as Rodriguez led Hero into the arena. That aging German shepherd moved with dignity, his posture alert despite the gray around his muzzle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jackson began, his voice carrying clearly through the speakers, "what you're about to see is a demonstration of scent detection. The dogs you'll meet in this segment have been trained to identify specific odors, from narcotics to explosives to human scent. In real-world situations, these abilities save lives and help law enforcement do their jobs more effectively." The crowd quieted as Rodriguez and Hero approached a mock apartment that had been constructed in the center of the arena. It was a simple setup, walls creating several rooms furnished with basic items to simulate a real living space. "Hero is a retired military working dog," Jackson continued. "During his service, he was trained to detect over 50 different explosive compounds. Today he'll be showing you how he searches an area." Rodriguez gave a hand signal and Hero began moving methodically through the apartment. The dog's entire demeanor changed as he entered working mode. His movements became more focused, his nose working constantly as he checked along walls, under furniture, and in corners. The crowd watched in rapt silence as Hero suddenly froze, his body becoming rigid as he detected something. He sat down, staring intently at a bookshelf in the living room area. "What you're seeing is called a passive alert," Jackson explained. "Rather than scratching or barking, which could be dangerous with certain explosives, Hero has been trained to sit and stay when he finds what he's looking for." Rodriguez approached the bookshelf and carefully removed a small container hidden behind several books. He held it up for the crowd to see. "This contains a safe training aid that mimics the scent of C4 explosive," Jackson said. "In a real situation, bomb disposal experts would now be called in." The crowd erupted in applause as Rodriguez rewarded Hero with his favorite toy, a simple tennis ball that the dog took with obvious delight despite his professional demeanor, moments before. As the next detection team entered the arena, Jackson noticed a stir near the entrance gate. He squinted against the afternoon sun, then felt a smile tug at his lips. Tyler and his 3 friends from the gas station were being led to empty seats in the front row by one of the volunteers. They looked uncomfortable, clearly feeling out of place among the families and officials, but they had come. Jackson handed the microphone to another handler and made his way around the arena to where the young men were sitting. They watched the ongoing demonstration with expressions ranging from bored skepticism to grudging interest. "You made it," Jackson said as he approached. Tyler looked up, surprise crossing his face. "Yeah, well, wasn't doing anything else today." The attempt at nonchalance wasn't entirely convincing. "Glad you could come," Jackson said simply. "What do you think so far?" "It's pretty cool," one of Tyler's friends admitted, his eyes following a Labrador retriever that was now demonstrating how it could find a hidden person in the mock apartment. "That dog just went straight to where that guy was hiding. Didn't even hesitate." "Labradors have about 300 million scent receptors," Jackson explained. "Humans have around 6 million. They experience the world primarily through smell in ways we can barely imagine." The dog had now found a second hidden person, and the crowd was applauding again. The young men watched with growing interest as the handler explained how this same ability was used to find people in disaster areas or lost hikers in wilderness. "Do you really use these dogs to find missing people?" Tyler asked. "Like in real situations?" Jackson nodded. 3 of our search teams were in Florida last month after the hurricane. They found 7 people trapped in collapsed buildings. Another team works with the county sheriff's department. They found a lost child in the national forest just last week, a 6-year-old who wandered away from a campsite. The next demonstration was beginning, this one showcasing dogs trained to assist people with medical conditions. A yellow Labrador demonstrated how it could detect an impending seizure in its handler, while another showed how it retrieved medication, opened doors, and performed other tasks for people with mobility issues. "That's the kind of stuff I didn't know dogs could do," Tyler said, watching as a small terrier mix demonstrated how it could alert its handler to sounds like doorbells or smoke alarms. "I thought they were just, for catching bad guys or finding drugs." That's part of it, Jackson agreed. But these animals can do so much more. They help veterans with PTSD, detect cancer earlier than medical tests, guide people who can't see. The list goes on. We're only beginning to understand the full range of what's possible when human and canine work together. As they talked, Jackson noticed a change in the young men. The defensive posturing from earlier was gone, replaced by genuine interest. They asked questions about the training, about how long it took to teach a dog these skills, about whether ordinary pets could learn some of the same things. The main demonstration was drawing to a close, but Jackson knew the best part was still to come. There's something you might find interesting after the formal presentation, he told Tyler and his friends. If you want to stick around, we do a meet and greet where people can interact with the dogs and handlers directly. Ask questions. Learn more about specific aspects of the training. We can really pet the dogs? Asked the quietest of Tyler's friends, speaking up for the first time. There was an eagerness in his voice that he couldn't quite hide. Some of them, Jackson nodded. The handlers will let you know which ones are open to that kind of interaction. Some of the working dogs stay more focused if they don't have casual contact with strangers. The final demonstration was a complex simulation of a building collapse. 3 dogs and their handlers worked together to locate victims hidden in a pile of rubble and debris. The crowd watched in amazement as the dogs navigated unstable surfaces, narrow openings, and challenging conditions to find every person hidden in the structure. When it was over, the commissioner made a brief speech thanking Jackson and his team for their service to the community. The formal presentation concluded with all the handlers and their dogs lining up for a final acknowledgement from the audience. As people began to disperse, moving toward the various stations set up for the meet and greet portion, Jackson turned to Tyler and his friends. Feel free to explore, he said. The handlers are happy to answer questions. If you're interested in learning more about what we do, there's an information booth by the main entrance. Tyler nodded, then hesitated. Hey, thanks for inviting us. After how we acted at the gas station. He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Everyone deserves a chance to learn something new, Jackson said simply. That's how we grow. As the young men moved away to explore the various stations, Martinez approached Jackson. Your gas station friends showed up, she observed. Didn't expect that. Sometimes people surprise you, Jackson replied, watching as the quietest of the group knelt to greet a therapy dog, a genuine smile breaking across his face as the dog licked his hand. Think any of them will follow up? We could use some young volunteers at the center, Martinez said. Jackson considered the question, watching as Tyler asked questions of a handler demonstrating how their dog helped detect contraband in prison settings. The young man was listening intently, his earlier swagger replaced by genuine curiosity. Maybe, Jackson said. You never know what might spark a change. Sometimes all it takes is seeing something different, something bigger than yourself to start thinking differently about your own path. As the afternoon light began to soften toward evening, Jackson moved through the crowd answering questions and thanking supporters. The event had been a success by any measure. Strong attendance, good demonstrations, generous donations to support their work.